Late August 1944, 0615 hours. Observation Post 4, Pardal, France. The morning report lay crumpled on the desk as German technical officers at Flak Regiment 155W struggled to comprehend the mathematics before them. The interception rates violated every principle of ballistic probability taught at Luftwaffe technical academies across the Reich. 82% destroyed. This cannot be accurate. Through field telescopes, German observers had witnessed something that contradicted everything their intelligence services assured them about Allied anti-aircraft capabilities. The V-1 flying bombs launched toward London in the pre-dawn hours were being destroyed at rates that defied explanation. Not shot down by fighters making dangerous pursuit curves, not tangled in barrage balloon cables, but destroyed by anti-aircraft fire over the coastal gun belt, shells exploding with impossible accuracy around the missiles, somehow detonating near them rather than requiring direct hits. At Flak Regiment 155W headquarters in the Chateau de Haute Obst, Oberst Max Wachtel, commander of the entire V-1 offensive, received these reports with growing alarm over the course of the German V-1 campaign. The proportion of flying bombs destroyed by the coastal gunbelt had risen from 17% in June to 74% by late August, reaching 82% during one extraordinary day in that final week of August 1944, marking the beginning of the most profound technological shock the Wehrmacht's weapons scientists would experience in the war. What neither Wachtel nor any German scientist knew was that they were witnessing the deployment of one of World War II's most closely guarded secrets, a technology so revolutionary that it was protected at the same level as the atomic bomb project. The proximity fuse, or VT, variable time fuse as the Allies coded it, was systematically destroying Hitler's terror weapon with a precision that German physics said shouldn't exist. The story began 10 weeks earlier, on June 13, 1944, exactly 1 week after D-Day. In response to the Allied invasion of Normandy, Hitler had unleashed his long-promised Beilagtungswaffe vengeance weapon against London. At 4:25 a.m. on June 13th, the first V-1 fell on London, landing in Grove Road in Bow, destroying a railway bridge and nearby homes. 6 people were killed, 30 injured, and 200 made homeless. The weapon represented years of German development, a pilotless aircraft powered by an Argus AS-109 014 pulsejet engine carrying 850 kilograms of a Wachtel explosive at 640 kilometers an hour. It was the world's first operational cruise missile, and German High Command believed it would bring Britain to its knees. Major Walter Dornberger, head of the V-weapons program at Peenemünde, had calculated that even with a conservative 25% success rate, the V-1 would deliver more explosive power to London than the entire Blitz of 1940-41. Each V-1 cost approximately 5,000 Reichsmarks to produce, a fraction of the cost of a manned bomber mission with no risk to aircrew. At Peenemünde Army Research Center, German scientists had reason for confidence. They had developed advanced rocket technology, created operational jet aircraft, and now fielded the first cruise missile. Dr. Robert Lasser, who designed the V-1's control system, calculated that Allied interception was nearly impossible. The flying bomb traveled at 640 kilometers per hour at varying altitudes between 600 and 2,700 meters. British fighters needed speeds exceeding 650 kilometers an hour to intercept. To destroy it, they had to close within 200 meters, risking destruction from the explosion. As for anti-aircraft fire, the probability of direct hit on such a small, fast target was calculated at less than 1 in 10,000 shells fired. This wasn't propaganda, but sound ballistic science. Conventional time-fused shells required accurate prediction, precise calculation, manual fuse setting, and perfect timing. With the V-1 speed, gunners had perhaps 30 seconds from detection to engagement. Oberst Max Wachtel, commanding Flak Regiment 155W, knew these limitations from both sides of anti-aircraft warfare. During the campaign, Germans would launch 9,521 V-1 missiles from ground sites against England, with thousands more against other targets, bringing the total to approximately 25,000 V-1s deployed throughout the war. Within days of first launches, troubling reports reached German intelligence. British anti-aircraft defenses were adapting with suspicious speed. By late June, the interception rate climbed from 10% to 24%, higher than predicted, but explainable. Then came July, and the statistics became inexplicable. German technical officers monitoring effectiveness noticed British guns claiming V1 kills with impossibly low ammunition expenditure. Observers on the French coast witnessed V1s flying steadily toward England, suddenly surrounded by flak bursts, then tumbling from the sky despite explosions occurring too far away from direct hits. Unknown to German intelligence, they were witnessing proximity fuses that turned near misses into kills. The technology was operational in the Pacific since January 1943, when USS Helena shot down a Japanese dive bomber with shells that exploded when sensing proximity to targets. The German intelligence failure was comprehensive. The Oslo report of November 1939 mentioned proximity fuse research, but German scientists dismissed it as disinformation. Germany had attempted to develop similar technology. Over 30 different designs researched, but none achieved operational status. German engineers had concluded proximity fuses were impossible. The technical challenges seemed insurmountable. Miniaturizing radio transmitter receivers for artillery shells, making vacuum tubes survive 20,000 G-forces, creating batteries that could activate after years of storage, achieving mass production. Yet by August 1944, American factories were producing 40,000 VT fuses daily. During the final week of August 1944, the proximity fuse achieved its maximum effectiveness. The British had reorganized their entire anti-aircraft defense system. Guns employed American STR-584 radar for automatic tracking. More crucially, they fired shells equipped with VT fuses modified specifically for V1 threats. The Royal Artillery and RAF Regiment had redeployed from North Downs positions to the south coast, creating a concentrated gun belt. This coastal positioning ensured any dud shells fell into the sea, preventing German capture. As V1s crossed the English coast, they entered a kill zone where technology trumped statistics. The SCR-584 radar automatically locked onto targets, calculated trajectories, and fed firing solutions to guns. The proximity fuse contained miniature radio transmitters built with tubes developed by Sylvania Electric and Western Electric. When reflected signals indicated proximity, Theratron switches triggered detonators, sending steel fragments through V1 hulls. On the peak day in late August, coastal guns destroyed 82% of incoming V1s, a rate German engineers deemed physically impossible. Reports of 82% interception created crisis meetings at German headquarters. Wachtel suspected sabotage. Emergency inspections found nothing wrong with missiles. Test firings over German territory showed normal performance. The problem manifested only against British defenses. German experts concluded the British had developed revolutionary anti-aircraft systems, but couldn't determine specifics without captured examples. They tried varying tactics, different altitudes, larger salvos, night launches, weather exploitation. Nothing worked. The kill rate remained devastating. At Peenemünde, scientists faced an uncomfortable conclusion. If the Allies had developed proximity fuses, they had achieved something Germany thought impossible. German efforts to uncover the secret intensified, but failed completely. The proximity fuse's security was nearly perfect. Production was compartmentalized across 110 factories. Workers knew only their specific tasks. Even the name variable time was deliberately misleading, suggesting conventional time fuse rather than proximity sensors. By 1944, American electronics industry capacity was devoted to fuse production. 22 million proximity fuses would be produced by war's end, costing over $1 billion in the 1940s. The Crosley Corporation alone produced over 5 million fuses, nearly a quarter of total production. The numbers revealed staggering industrial mismatch. While Germany struggled producing V1s using forced labor, America transformed its electronics industry for fuse production. Peak daily production reached 40,000 units. Costs dropped from $732 per unit in 1942 to $18 by 1945. Crosley Corporation, which had manufactured radios and refrigerators pre-war, employed 10,000 workers. producing 16,000 fuses daily at peak. Sylvania Electric dedicated its entire vacuum tube research division to developing ruggedized components, producing 400,000 miniaturized tubes daily, 95% of all tubes used. The contrast was absolute. Germany handcrafted weapons in limited numbers. America mass-produced revolutionary technology at unprecedented scale. Monthly American proximity fuse production exceeded total German V1 production for the entire war. The proximity fuse represented extraordinary engineering. The device had to survive being fired from a gun, 20,000 G acceleration, 25,000 RPM spin, temperature extremes. Sylvania developed miniature vacuum tubes based on hearing aid designs, but reinforced to survive these forces. Batteries remained dormant for years, yet activated instantly when needed. The fuse contained a miniature radio that transmitted signals continuously. When reflections indicated proximity to large objects, circuits triggered detonation. This seemingly simple concept required solving problems German engineers considered impossible. Quality control was unprecedented. Every fuse underwent multiple tests. Random samples were actually fired in test guns. Rejection rates below 2% demonstrated remarkable manufacturing precision at massive scale. By September 1944, the V1 offensive was effectively neutralized. Of 9,521 V1s launched from ground sites against Britain, only 2,515 reached London, killing 6,184 civilians and injuring 17,981. While tragic, these casualties represented a fraction of German intentions. General Frederick Pyle, commanding Anti-Aircraft Command, calculated that without proximity fuses, V1 casualties would have been 4 to 5 times higher. The proximity fuse saved London from devastation. Germany shifted to night launches and developed the V2 rocket, which flew too fast for interception. But these desperate measures couldn't achieve strategic impact. The V1 became a costly failure, consuming resources desperately needed elsewhere. The German failure to detect proximity fuses represented one of history's greatest intelligence disasters. Despite extensive networks and technical expertise, Germans never grasped what they faced. The program remained secret throughout the war. Not a single intact proximity fuse fell into German hands during the V1 campaign. Remarkably, during the Battle of the Bulge, German forces captured an American ammunition dump containing proximity fuses, but never recognized them. Their assumption that such devices were impossible blinded them to evidence in their own hands. After Germany's surrender, interrogations revealed complete German ignorance about proximity fuses. Luftwaffe Max Wachtel told Allied officers they suspected improved radar or faster-setting fuses, but never imagined self-thinking shells. German scientists shown captured American VT fusers expressed disbelief. They couldn't comprehend tubes surviving acceleration, batteries remaining viable, circuits functioning after gunfiring. They estimated being 10 years behind American technology. Dr. Merle Tuveit, who led proximity fuse development at Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory, later reflected that success came from systematic collaboration between scientists, engineers, and production workers, something totalitarian systems couldn't achieve. The proximity fuse demonstrated that World War II's outcome was determined in laboratories and factories as much as battlefields. While Germany pursued exotic wonder weapons, America focused on multiplicative technologies enhancing existing weapons. The proximity fuse made every anti-aircraft gun 5 to 10 times more effective. Secretary of the Navy James Forrestal stated, "The proximity fuse has helped blaze the trail to Japan. Without the protection this ingenious device has given the surface ships of the fleet, our westward push could not have been so swift, and the cost in men and ships would have been immeasurably greater." The V1 program relied heavily on slave labor. Tens of thousands of concentration camp prisoners died in underground factories manufacturing V1s. Meanwhile, American workers voluntarily worked overtime for premium wages, not knowing exactly what they produced, but understanding its importance. At Sylvania's Ipswich facility, over 5,000 women worked 12-hour shifts producing specialized components. They discovered only after the war that they had helped save London from Hitler's terror weapons. The proximity fuse secret held completely. British anti-aircraft crews didn't know what made their shells effective. They had special ammunition with strict accounting requirements. Every proximity-fused shell fired at V1s was tracked. Unexploded shells were immediately secured. Naval vessels patrolled the channel, preventing German recovery of duds. This secrecy cost lives. Allied ground forces couldn't use proximity-fused artillery until December 1944. Thousands of soldiers died because the technology was too secret to risk. Yet using them against V1s was justified. London's survival during the invasion was crucial. For Germany, the V1 program drained critical resources while achieving minimal strategic impact. Launching approximately 25,000 V1s total cost millions of Reichmarks and diverted resources from anti-tank weapons desperately needed on shrinking fronts. The program's reliance on slave labor added a moral dimension to its failure. The proximity fuse was defeating weapons built through human suffering, a contrast fully understood only post-war. The proximity fuse represented warfare's transformation, victory through engineering and production rather than individual weapon superiority. It proved modern warfare was a contest of industrial systems, not just military forces. Before saving Pacific Fleet ships and enabling Japan's defeat, the proximity fuse saved London. Germans watching V1s fall never understood why. The technology that defeated them was inconceivable within their scientific framework. The transformation was dramatic. Before proximity fuses, destroying a V1 required average 2,500 heavy anti-aircraft shells. With proximity fuses, this dropped to 100 shells. The gunbelt's interception rate rose from 17% to 82% in 10 weeks. This wasn't achieved through courage or training, but through mass production of advanced technology on a scale Germany couldn't match or comprehend. America had mobilized its entire electronics industry, employed over 80,000 workers, and invested over $1 billion to produce 22 million fuses. The proximity fuse was declassified in September 1945. The War Department announcement began. One of the most important weapons developed during the war, surpassed in effectiveness only by the atomic bomb. For German scientists who had puzzled over V1 failures, revelation brought understanding and humiliation. They had been defeated not by strategy or courage, but by industrial capacity they hadn't imagined possible. Post-war interviews revealed German shock. They had believed their V1 represented weapons technology's pinnacle. Learning it was defeated by mass-produced electronics costing less than $20 each was devastating. They had lost not to warriors, but to assembly lines. The proximity fuse technology evolved into modern air defense systems, radar altimeters, and electronic warfare capabilities. For Germany's former weapon scientists, it remained a permanent reminder of their wartime blindness. The proximity fuse proved that in modern warfare, mass-producing good technology matters more than crafting perfect weapons. Germany produced brilliant individual weapons. America produced effective weapons by the millions. On that remarkable day in late August 1944, when proximity fuses destroyed 82% of German V1s, the nature of warfare changed forever. The Germans launching their vengeance weapons never knew what invisible technology was defeating them. They had done everything right by their understanding, developed advanced weapons, trained elite crews, achieved breakthroughs, yet they were defeated by mass-produced electronics they couldn't imagine. The proximity fuse saved London through thousands of small explosions, each guided by technology German science deemed impossible. It was industrial democracy's triumph over totalitarian engineering, mass production over crafted perfection, multiplied simple solutions over complex wonder weapons. The Germans never discovered what hit their V-1s as they fell burning from the sky, defeated by a secret they couldn't conceive and an industrial might they couldn't match. The proximity fuse had turned Hitler's vengeance weapon into London's salvation, and the Germans never understood how or why until long after it mattered. In the end, America's greatest victory wasn't on battlefields, but in factories, where millions of workers, many of them women who didn't know what they were making, produced the tiny electronic devices that saved a city and transformed warfare forever. The 82% interception rate achieved in late August 1944 stood as proof that in modern war, industrial capacity could defeat any wonder weapon, no matter how ingenious. The proximity fuse was more than a weapon. It was evidence that democracy's ability to mobilize science and industry could overcome tyranny's forced brilliance. And the Germans, watching their perfect weapons fall from the sky, never knew why they had already lost a war their leaders insisted they were winning.